Alright guys, today on the channel we're going to be having a discussion about Xbox Game Pass and basically how Microsoft have been knocking it out the park with this service, and it's just basically become unbelievable value to its subscribers. I'm not alone today, however. I have brought my good buddy Clerk onto the channel to have a discussion about this. Say hello, Clerk.
Hey Hayes, I'm excited to be here. I'm ready to jump right into it.
And let's jump into the video. So in my opinion, Microsoft Game Pass, or Xbox Game Pass, whatever you want to call it, really started to take off round about the time that Microsoft decided that all their first party exclusive titles would launch day one onto the service. Claire, would you agree with that? Would you think that's when it really started to become a top value proposition?
I think so, man. They already had such a massive backlog of pretty good games, you know, a lot of big titles and a lot of indie games that people may not have been interested in. But when you start adding that first party proposition to this deal, it becomes a much better deal. You know, most recently, you've had the Medium, you've had some other first party titles because Microsoft's, you know, they delayed like Halo and stuff like that. But Halo is going to be free immediately on Game Pass, you know. Psychonauts 2 is a game I'm super excited for. That's first party in Microsoft now. That's going to be on there day one. You know, there's all these future games we can look out and know like these are going to be at Game Pass simply because they're owned by Microsoft and they're big games. You know, I think that's such a good, system, because if you play at least one of those new games a month, and what Game Pass is like $15, you're getting games for $45 off, right?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I mean, the thing is as well, I think if you're even planning to buy 2 games a year, then the 1 year subscription becomes worth it, because obviously chances are if you want 2 games on Game Pass throughout the course of 12 months, you're going to find a lot more games on top of that you would be happy to play and happy to try. And I'm someone that, from experience of doing game reviews and stuff like that, sometimes games that you don't necessarily think you would buy end up being games that you really enjoy. And because the whole system of getting demos is dying away, yeah, some games still do them, but demos obviously aren't as prevalent as they used to be. People don't really get the chance to try games before they buy anymore, whereas this seems to be an all-you-can-eat buffet of trying and then you don't have to buy. Do you know what I mean? So I personally feel like Games Pass is a massive good value proposition. Up to this point, what has been your favourite additions to the service? Like, what games have you put most time into? What games have you enjoyed the most?
So what I've put the most time into recently, I think, is probably some of the EA titles that I didn't get to play. I didn't get to play Star Wars Fallen Order, or Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. That game was phenomenal. It got a boosted rate when it came to the Series X, so that's a good one I got to catch up on. And I'm sure we'll talk about the EA acquisition later. I mean, I've just been playing whatever, dude. Indie games I missed. I played The Falconeer. I played Donut County, which is a phenomenal indie game that, yeah, it's a mobile game first, but it still runs just as good on the Xbox. So there's a lot of things that I missed that it's good for catching me up on. And of course, I've played like new games that come out, like the Medium, you know. So you're right. It's caused me to play games I probably wouldn't have played otherwise because I don't want to drop, money on every game that comes out.
I mean, I can
try any game.
The perfect one for me to talk about is probably State of Decay. State of Decay is a game that I really like the idea of, I like the idea of the zombie survival, trying to build up your own camp and stuff like that. However, I knew the game itself, it looked a bit, even when it was new, it looked a bit dated, you know what I mean? Because obviously it was a port of a 360 title. I don't really ever think I would have dropped money to buy that, but I really wanted to play it. So getting it on a service like Games Pass meant that I could obviously play the game and enjoy it, and then the added benefit was when the sequel was coming out, that was going to launch day one on Game Pass as well. So I think I don't want to say it's an experimental title, although to a certain degree I think State of Decay kind of is an experimental title, if that makes sense. It doesn't have your normal generic gameplay loop that you would expect from a zombie survival type game, and that was one for me that was probably, up to this point anyway, had been my most enjoyable game on the service. Along the way I did pick up lots of other titles, because you would get things popping up for a few months like Resident Evil titles, Devil May Cry, you know what I mean? They would put things like that on it. I'm sure Marvel vs Capcom was on it at one point. Some of those games,
I think it still might be.
yeah, some of those games rotate in and rotate out. That would be probably one of my own negatives about the service, but we'll talk about that a bit later on in the video. So we've talked about what came at the start, guys, but now we're going to talk about what's on the horizon and what's recently been added to Xbox Game Pass. Are you ready to dive in and talk about that, Clark?
Oh yeah, I'm excited.
So earlier in the video, Clark, you did mention something about Microsoft's studio acquisitions and adding more titles in. I think the one that you actually referred to was Double Fine and Psychonauts. I think that's a good segue to talk about what I'm kind of going to jump onto now, and that is the big one. I think this is probably the most significant change to Game Pass in a while, and people probably didn't think this was going to get topped, but believe it or not, after this we've got something else to talk about, and that is Bethesda. Obviously, the IP holder for the likes of Doom, Skyrim, Oblivion, massive games. Fallout is another one. What do you think about the acquisition?
Absolutely insane, bro. And it makes the value of Game Pass ridiculous, you know? We can talk about how they've already dropped, what is it, like 20 Bethesda games almost? Maybe less, I can't remember. But you can go back and... If you missed the past 10 years of Bethesda games, go ahead and try them, you know? Fallout 4, the original Dooms, you know, all these games are on there, and they're still good games, you know? And they've introduced FPS boosts for most of them. They've upgraded a lot, and it's just, it's ridiculous value, man, at this point. And we could talk about what's coming down the pipeline, but just talking about what they've already put on the service from Bethesda is already top of the line. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
that's the thing. One thing to note is I have seen people talking about this online, and there seems to be a bit of confusion where people seem to think that new Bethesda titles won't appear on Game Pass. Guys, I need to say this to you. Microsoft have stated all their studio games are going to be released on Game Pass day one. Bethesda is now a Microsoft studio, so their new titles will appear on Game Pass day one. So I would say that I'm never one to push someone to one console over the other. I am a multi-format console gamer, and I believe that if you can afford that, you can get the best of all worlds by having more than one console. But what I would say is, if you are a single console-minded person and your favourite game studio is Bethesda, maybe the Xbox is the best way, unless you've got a PC. But maybe the best way to go is getting yourself an Xbox now, because chances are the lead development console for all of these games going forward are going to be on Xbox. In fact, I think it's pretty much a given at this point, that's what's going to happen. So those games will probably run better, they'll probably have more optimization for the likes of the Series X, and you will likely see better performance on the Xbox, as well as getting the game for free.
Yeah.
You know, so I think
I agree.
I think it's a huge acquisition, because it also opens up the possibility of things like getting Fallout New Vegas 2 and stuff like that, because obviously Microsoft own both the studios that were involved in the making of that game.
Yep.
That's a big one.
It's insane, dude. And I know a lot of people hope that they're not exclusive to Game Pass, you know? Obviously they're going to be there day one, but are they only going to be on Game Pass is a lot of people's worry, and they've kind of talked about it recently. And they kind of said, yeah, expect it, you know? There's going to be some Bethesda titles that are only going to be on, you know, Microsoft's platforms. And I think that's when it's really going to set in for people, is when they see, you know, Elder Scrolls 6 only on Microsoft platforms. I think that's when it's going to really kick in for people how big this acquisition really was, you know?
Do you think they're going to go for that type of title, Clark? I think
they absolutely will.
They did say that some future titles will appear exclusively on Xbox, but they didn't really say what it was, so people were a bit up in the air. I mean, they're still in the unique circumstance of owning a company who has a 1-year timed exclusive for a PlayStation 5 game.
Yeah.
Deathloop is still going to... People are confused about this as well, but the deal was done and signed before Microsoft bought the studio, so Deathloop is still going to be an exclusive PS5 title from an Xbox studio, which is quite funny. But when that game gets ported over to Xbox, it's going to be free on Game Pass.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's crazy, man. I think people really don't understand how big of this deal is for Microsoft's platforms, you know? And I think it's going to take a couple years for that to kick in. just really how serious of a deal this is.
Yeah, I do definitely agree. Well, that's enough about Bethesda. What we want to do is jump on and talk about some actual surprise things that came out yesterday, and it's mainly the reason that prompted me to have this discussion video with Clark, is the fact that Microsoft are not only launching their own titles, not only launching their studio titles that they've purchased on Game Pass, they are now launching games day one from third parties on Xbox Game Pass. Now, these games aren't exclusive to Game Pass, but it's the first time they've appeared on Xbox consoles, and day one they're going to be available on Game Pass. Claire, the big one I want to talk about first, and the one that completely caught me by surprise because I did not even know this was getting ported.
Surprised me too, man.
Was Octopath Traveler. Now, obviously, Nintendo Switch fans will know that this is a Square Enix kind of pixel art styled 3D diorama style RPG, and it's beloved by Switch fans. Switch fans absolutely love it. I feel that it might have slightly underperformed, but fans of the series absolutely love it. It was a perfect fit for the Switch. I never thought we'd see it anywhere else, and then bang, yesterday, Microsoft within 10 other games just dropped, oh by the way, Octopath Traveler's launching exclusively on Xbox Game Pass. What do you think of that one?
That was a big shock, and I think that kind of opens up the realm for like nothing is safe, you know? Obviously, Nintendo's first parties you're not going to get, but you know, the products that were developed for the Switch are, you know, potentially down the line available to be acquired by Microsoft for Game Pass, you know? It seems like nothing's out of Microsoft's range of what they're willing to put on that service. And it's crazy. I played Octopath on the Switch. I loved it, enjoyed it, and I'm considering playing it again simply because it's on Game Pass. And you know, if it had just launched on Sony and Xbox's stores, I probably would have touched it. But I don't know. I feel like it's such a good deal, not only because of the products you're getting, but because it gets people to play video games more. You know?
Yeah.
I've already paid for all of these games. Why not play them? You know, I can sit and stare at the Xbox store and be like, I don't want to spend $50 on that. I don't want to spend $30 on that. But these games are technically in my library. I should play all of them if I can, right?
Yeah.
I think it's, you know, say what you want about playing video games all day, but people can do that now.
Oh yeah.
You know, now's the best time to do that, especially with Game Pass. And for a game like Octopath to just be lumped on top with the next wave of games on there, it's crazy, dude. They shock me every couple of weeks when they show off something new.
Well, I'm wondering if this was something they done when they were doing their friendly working relationship with Nintendo, when they were allowing things like Cuphead to get ported over to the Switch, when they were allowing things like, I think Ori, unless I'm wrong, I think Ori's available on the Switch. It is, isn't it? Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I'm fairly sure you can get that for the Switch. Obviously, you've got Xbox characters in Smash in the form of Banjo and Kazooie. So I'm wondering if this was one of the little friendly arrangements they came to where certain things, not Nintendo owned IP, but Nintendo exclusives could appear on their platform, you know. It seems like something they might have done because it's a big coup, and it's not the only one. There's another massive one as well. Now this one, we don't know how this one's going to play out because unlike Octopath Traveler that we know is a good game, we know is successful, the other game, Outriders, I mean, it had a fairly, I want to say, rocky demo. I mean, there's a lot of people saying it's not that great, other people saying it is good. You don't really know how these things are going to go. But you don't have to waste $60 to find out because you can get it day one on Xbox Game Pass. And I'm not entirely sure how it works, but I know it's an online co-op shooter. I'm assuming that means it's something in the same vein as Destiny. So building a healthy online community is something that is really important for games like this. And you're going to get that day one because there's so many people having access to it.
So we're kind of uncertain on whether it's a live service game yet because my roommate who he got a chance to get around to play this demo. Obviously there's some balancing issues and stuff that they need to work on, which I'm sure they will. But he said it was phenomenal playing the co-op with, you know, some friends of his. But he wasn't sure if he dropped the $60 on it. You know, he didn't think it might be worth it for that. But, you know, we saw the news that it was coming to Game Pass, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to play this day one now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And you're getting to support devs that you might not have. You're getting to support games that you close your eyes to because of multiple reasons, you know? And that just speaks to the power of putting something on Game Pass. You know, you're going to get played. You're going to build a community simply because you're on that service. Something that you may not have any other way to establish.
Definitely. I mean, again, there is one other thing. Before I go into the couple of negatives I've got around Game Pass, and this could just be purely me, but one other thing that you did mention that I actually totally forgot about coming into this video is when you subscribe to Microsoft Games Pass, you also get EA access. So that's right, all the EA titles, I think it's about 3 to 6 months after release, get added into... EA, apart from FIFA. FIFA, they make you wait a full year before you get FIFA, because that is literally EA's moneymaker. A lot of people
that's their seller.
A lot of people don't realize it, but FIFA like absolutely dwarfs Madden for like revenue. Obviously, because outside of the USA, the largest sport in the world is football. I need to say soccer. I hate saying soccer, but I'll say soccer. And FIFA literally doesn't get added until the new one comes out. So apart from that, you get everything about 6 months later, and that's just even more value on top. So yeah, the value-wise, Xbox Game Pass is definitely there. And not even to mention, if you get an Android smartphone and you get yourself a controller, like I have a Razer Kishi, for example, you don't even need an Xbox. You can, if you've got a decent internet connection, you can just play these games. And let's be honest, these days, a lot of people, if they're like me, married, wife, likes to watch soaps, likes to watch other things, you can't just hog the TV. And you don't like to disappear into a bedroom because it makes you seem unsociable. Whack out your mobile phone, log into the cloud, get yourself onto Xbox Game Pass servers, and you can play all of these games. And they run absolutely brilliantly. I think it's 720p, but when you're playing on a mobile phone screen, you really don't notice. So again,
you don't notice it.
Again, you can have all this value and not even fork out the initial purchase price for the Xbox. And I believe they're also working on a client for PC, because obviously not all Xbox games work on PC. They have some PC games for Ultimate, but some are console or cloud only. Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they're making a client for PC, so there will come a time that if you have PC, you'll have access to not only the PC Xbox Game Pass library, you'll also have access to the cloud library as well.
Yeah, I believe that's something they're working on, because it's kind of weird to have two different libraries for two different services, and I think you pay the same, right? So I think that's something they want to work on, because it's not hidden that PC kind of has the shaft right now on Game Pass. So I'm sure they're working on trying to catch them up, or building a way that these games can all be on there. Yeah,
I'm fairly positive they're making a client for PC. That's the only one thing that will concern me slightly. When they do launch that client, you really do not need an... If you have a PC, there's no incentive there for you to buy an Xbox. Which, again, I've never really understood myself. I don't really get how they make money out of Game Pass. But, you know what? It's good for consumers. So let's not dwell on that, and we'll move on to my one or two little negatives. And again, purely subjective. One, I'm not a big fan of some of these limited time releases that go on to, you get a short window, maybe a few months to play it. I know for a lot of people that can be, well, you've got a few months to play it, just play it and complete it. But there's that many games that sometimes you might not even notice it until there's not long left before it's due to leave, You download it, your progress gets about halfway, and then you can't really do anything because the game's been removed from the service. The other one that I've got an issue with is sometimes I get Netflix syndrome. What I mean by that is...
You're just staring at the menu?
Yes. Netflix syndrome. I can sit there for about an hour trying to decide what I want to watch because there's too many things to choose from. And with Game Pass, it's the same thing. You can just be like, there's too much choice, so I don't know what to choose, And what that can end up doing is, if I have a lot of games on my hard drive, I can game jump, and game jumping's bad because you end up not finishing a game. Like, you'll get to a point, you'll get bored for 5 minutes, and it's like, I'm just going to jump over to this game instead. Do you have any of that? Does that happen to you, or is that just a thing because I'm old?
I don't experience it nearly as much as some other people I know. Really, once I pick up a game or two, I'll focus on those 2 games until I beat them, right? I can't just like jump around from game to game and try and find a game I want to play,
Yep.
It's just something I've, it's a detriment to me because sometimes I'll play a game even though I don't want to, simply because I don't want to find another game to play.
Yeah.
And I'll just play out whatever I'm playing. And I don't know. I like it because I can stay pretty focused and I won't drop games as much, but maybe I should sometimes, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well,
and then when it comes to... What was the first point you made? Can you remind me?
Netflix syndrome.
Oh, no, before Netflix syndrome.
Oh, not being able to... the game's disappearing after a certain period of time.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree with that too, man. There's so many times I don't realize a game is leaving until they put it in the leaving soon tab. I wish there was a better way or a more presentable way to know exactly how much time a game has on the store.
Yep.
That way I can better prioritize games. Because if there's a game I want to play and it's about midway on my list, but I know it's ending soon, it'd probably get bumped up, you know? So I wish they were a little more open about that.
The only thing that I could see that they could do to improve that, and I don't know how they would go ahead and implement this, is if whatever game you downloaded had an expiry period. Basically, if you downloaded it, the license would be valid for 30 days, for example, and at the end of 30 days, the system would just recheck. If it's still on Game Pass, then it would just renew for the next 30 days, which would mean if you grabbed a game the last day it was on there, you would still at least have 30 days to finish that game. I just don't know necessarily how they would implement that, you know, but it's just a suggestion maybe for moving forward to improve the service. So anyway, guys, this is a bit of a new format for the channel. Obviously, you know yourself, the channel's pretty new and it is still developing. I'm going to have more of these podcast discussion style chats with friends that I've developed along the way making content, and Clerk was just kind enough to agree to be the first person to come on and do this. Might be due to the fact that he's a massive Xbox fanboy. He'll never admit that.
I don't know where you're getting that idea.
He's a massive Xbox fanboy, so he seemed like the perfect person to jump on and talk about this. So, as usual, guys, if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel, like the video, and anytime I've got a guest in the channel, I'd love to let them sign off. Oh, and before I do that, Clerk actually runs a podcast. I'm going to leave a link to that in the comments down below. Make sure you jump out and you check out his channel as well. But is there anything you'd like to say, Clerk, before I finish up?
No, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I hope people gain some insight from this conversation, take something away from it. Or maybe they get engaged in the comments and, you know, continue the conversation. That's always my recommendation. Because it's that, you know, you and I can't have a whole conversation by ourselves. There's more point of views out there that I'm always interested to hear in. So hopefully people get engaged in the comments and we can talk some more about it too.
Definitely. Well, again, thanks for joining me for this one, Clerk. And guys, as always, I'll catch you on the next video. See ya.